Hello my friends, today I'm going to start a bit unusual because I would like to send massive thanks to all my patrons who support this channel, pledging a few dollars every week. If you also want to be my patron, check what benefits you can have while supporting coldemonspl. You can find the link in the description and at the end of this video. If you are here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Also write a comment because I would love to read your opinion. I am getting close to 10,000 subscribers and it would be great to have enough for the channel's birthday in early August. I hope you can help me achieve this and the content of my channel is worth it. Okay, the base is ready to be painted with a primer. All the removable parts are already put aside and now the whole thing will be covered with a black primer. As always, I use a proven product from AK Interactive. I start painting with the bricks on the platform. First I painted all of them in brick red. 2 layers did the job and I didn't even care if the color was more saturated here and less somewhere else. It won't matter after the weathering. Of course I also immediately painted all the bricks visible in the plaster cavities on the building. To choose the right colors for individual bricks, I used my article in Landscapes of War Volume 4. You can see the review of this book in the link at the top. You don't have to discover the fire, just open a book. I painted the concrete plates on the ramp in 2 shades of grey. Maybe it looks a bit rough, but I didn't waste my time doing fancy work with the shades. I covered a piece of soil near the concrete slabs with the remains of the paint that I had left after painting bricks. This will later be completely covered by mud, so it doesn't make sense to look for the right colors. Now, one of the most demanding parts of the entire painting. You always have to think carefully about what color to use to paint the building. This is a big element that is visible from all sides and all angles, so it's better not to make a mistake. From my experience I know that quite subdued colors, beige, sand grey, work best. Of course you have to compose everything so that the colors are interesting and not blend into one piece. 2 layers will be enough to keep the intensity at the right level. Besides, the work that Arthur did with the texture of the plaster is worth painting and visualizing it well. In so large surfaces the accelerator is needed to speed up the work. To be precise, to paint the roof I used 4 colors: dark grey, smoke black, black and rubber black. I wanted to get different shades of individual pieces of the roofing felt to make it look interesting. I painted the bottom boards with sand paint and it was deck tan. I did the same with the front door and upstairs, but here the wooden elements were painted light brown at once. I was wondering whether to use a different color, but after looking at some old buildings I found it the best. For the window sills I made a mixture of silver and grey, and now I could easily install the windows, which of course I had previously completed with transparent plastic as an imitation of glass and painted the frames white. Note how nice open window looks like. It's a great detail. The edges of chipped plaster on the walls look best in some shade of grey. Again shade of grey? It's a curse or other shit? In this case it's better to paint less than more, unless the plaster remains have been prepared in such a way that they also occupy a larger area of bricks. And now the most difficult element, the inscription with the name of the town. Truly speaking, it's not the name of the town, but Hungary in Hungarian language. That's how the Google Dictionary translated it for me, and if I made a mistake I apologize to my fellow Hungarians for that. I didn't want to look for a real name of the place, especially since most of this inscription will be incomplete anyway because of the damages on the wall. I printed the right size on paper, and after trying on I prepared the template on masking tape. Of course I painted the marked area white before. In general, painting on such an uneven surface with masking is very difficult, and I was sure that minor text corrections would be necessary. It's just almost impossible for the paint not to flow under the tape somewhere. Even though I tried to carefully check its adhesion and properly run the brush with the paint, it was still impossible to avoid imperfections. Here I no longer be showing how I struggled with correcting individual letters, but in the end it's good enough to do the job the way I wanted it to. Time for the first wash. It's not some kind of rocket science, and what you see is fast work. I didn't apply any varnish on the surfaces and the wash entered wherever it wanted. I was counting on the possible excess to be washed off with a clean thinner in a moment. It also happened, and I did most of the dirty work with this one product. I started with the wash, then additional stronger discoloration and stains on the walls. That's not all. I also used the same product for the aging of the wood elements on the roof. I was surprised how versatile it turned out to be and how well it all fit together. So now you can watch all of this. I will be back in a moment. On the roof I did a little old-fashioned dry brushing. It looks good because from what I have seen on the internet, roofing felt has a variety of shades from almost black to grey, again grey, so you can play with the colors a bit even though the base is painted in very dark colors. Previously the joining of individual fragments was made of a sculpting mass, so they had a completely different surface. Of course, from the very beginning I wanted to emphasize it and check how it should look like. First I painted it with black paint and then topped it with satin polish to give a little smooth look. It was 100% successful. A little weathering paint diluted with water will do a great job to brighten up the panels even more. I sped up the drying with the accelerator and after a while the entire roof section was ready. I made a little rotten trace where the stairs joined the wall. Later I will add a little green wash to it for a little bit of life, however it sounds. And the mortar between the bricks. The way is very simple, just use a little amount of plaster, not a pigment as it is difficult to remove. The plaster can be pressed nicely between the bricks and the excess can be removed very easily by wiping the surface with your finger. This is enough to wipe off the excess and leave a little in the spaces between the bricks. And at the end you can fix the plaster with a little water, but I didn't do it here because I just forgot. However, the plaster sticks very well to the surface anyway. Okay, now we'll attach the base to the photo frame. Honestly, it sounds very simple, but sometimes such simple things can get a bit of trouble. Without going into details, it's worth planning everything in advance and considering when to merge. I did it a bit too late to think that it will be easier to paint when it's still separate, but I managed to get out of it and bring everything to an appropriate end. I strengthened the whole thing with screws because it gives 100% certainty that the stand won't fall off the frame. Otherwise the adhesion is definitely better. Wooden sleepers are covered with flat earth from Tamiya and the rails are painted with green-brown from AK. Before I started working on them, waiting for the paint to dry, I glued pieces of soft pads to the bottom of the stand so that the frame wouldn't scratch the surface of the table. In my opinion, the mini art train tracks are the best on the market. Painting them is a pure pleasure and I am always sure of the effect I will get by using this product. In the photos I found on the internet, the wooden sleepers are generally very dark, so there was no other option but to do the same on mine. Wash for Wood did the job and after 2 coats the foundation looked real. The polished strip left by wheels of the train mustn't be missing on the railroad tracks. The easiest way to do this is with a soft pencil. You have to remember how the wheel looks like and polish 2 surfaces of each track. Now with the couple drops of super glue I attach the railway section to the base. The rails have been slightly stained with rust-colored weathering paint. Here too, the 2 layers did the job of giving these elements a subtly rusty coating that doesn't overwhelm with color but is pronounced enough to tell the tracks are rusty. The path on the sleepers between the tracks should be less colored in reality, but to keep the contrast on the stand, I decided to use a light color for the base painting. Wash will darken the color considerably, but there will still be a difference between these elements and the sleepers under the rails. I used the remains of the balsa to fill the space between the sleepers, and they are 1 mm below their surface. Thanks to this I will need less stones to fill the track. Before the aggregate is poured out, I covered the soil with mud, exactly the same as on the tank and motorcycle. I covered the protruding mountain screws with it. Of course, I also applied a thin layer next to the tracks and stairs. In my stocks I have 4 types of small pebbles that are suitable for filling individually. 4 types and I must have 1. I will mix them up. I've done this before, but I always wonder if it's a good step. And now we are sprinkling stones. It's a bit of fun with it and we won't avoid stones all over the workbench. The most important is to do it piece by piece and then glue it together using gravel and sand fixer. A small pipette with which we apply the product to specific places works very well. It's very precise. After drying, a bit of rail dust will be useful to muffle the whole thing a bit. Before I even begin applying snow for good, there must be a few clumps of dry grass in some places. I used dry seagrass for this. Here and there I cut them for the proper size and shape. Now I could start applying snow easily. At each spot I first applied the pigment cement and then sprinkled it with snow. This method worked perfectly. I removed the excess with a small vacuum cleaner, thanks to which I could see immediately if it was necessary to add the product somewhere. A few boxes of Eureka XXL will add a bit of detail to the overall look, but most of all it will help me attach one of the figures. Designed to lean on the motorcycle, it didn't fit good enough for me in the composition, so I thought that it would be leaning on the boxes and looking at the tank. To get the correct look of a chain, first I soaked it in liquid to blacken. Such an old already used container is perfect for this. A moment in the liquid and we have a blackened element that now needs to be dried and you can start to cover it with a bit of rust. By the way, it's very important to stick to the rule that you spin the jar that you are not using. Accidental spilling of the product is not so difficult and always ends in a loss. A mix of washes will do the job in a very short time. Finally, a quick drying with accelerator and it can be mounted on the wheel. The figure is already attached, plus a milk can and Sturmgewehr, and we have the first actor on the stage. The second is also ready, but you need to stick a piece of a pin in his foot so that there are no problems with its attachment. A small hole in the plate and you can position the figure. Finally, I made the setting of the motorcycle. Of course, I also attached it like a figure. Initially I thought that one pin would be enough, but to be sure I put two, which will keep the motorcycle in a fixed position regardless of turning the base. You have to remember to drill the holes with sensitivity and without rush, because it's very easy to ruin the work and pierce the wheel rim. The tank was also attached to the stand, but here because of the size I used two screws. It was also helpful in removing the problem with a slightly bent chassis, which is a mistake of this model and is mentioned on internet forums by modelers around the world. A bit of snow on the tracks is needed to unify the whole thing with the ground, and I can say that everything is ready. And there is also a drop of wash to make the snow a bit dirty. Just a bit. And to the end, just a small repainting suggested by one of the viewers. I painted one shell green, just like they looked at the end of the war. And this is the final result after all episodes you have watched the last weeks. It was quite a long and exhausting project, so the next one will be shorter and smaller. I already mentioned in the comments that it will be Hellcat from Tamiya. Apparently this is the model of the year, so there will be an opportunity to find out about it. But before this Hellkitty, next Monday I will show you how I did the rebuilding of my workshop. It will be a short story, sometimes quite funny. Stay tuned for this. So if you are interested in King Tiger diorama HD photos, please see my Patreon. You can find there much more content published only for patrons, so consider joining the team. For the end, please feel free to leave your comments below, give a video a like, and it'd be great if you subscribe to the channel. As I mentioned before, in couple weeks there will be the first anniversary of the channel, and I would like to get at least 10 kilos of subscribers then. You can help me with this. So, subscribe! That's all for today, my friends. See you next Monday. Cheers!